I've mentioned in the past that I don't think Sonic Colors is as good as everyone makes it out to be. It's still a great game, don't get me wrong, but the level design of probably 70 to 80% of the game was awkwardly platforming heavy, even more so than Marble Zone from all the way back in Sonic 1. Through that awkward level design, Colors grew to be one of my not-so-favorite Sonic games. There is something else I have to say about Sonic Colors, however. It's one of my favorite Sonic games of all time. I'm serious. The fantastic boost level design, the cool Wisp power-ups, the beyond stellar soundtrack, and all the character cameos and side missions. Okay, I should probably specify and drop the joke now. I'm referring to the DS version of Sonic Colors. Yes, there was a DS version, and yes, it was beyond fantastic. Developed as a collaboration between Sonic Team and Dimps, the people behind the Sonic Advance trilogy and Sonic Rush duology, this game takes the gameplay engine of Sonic Rush and applies Sonic Colors aesthetics to it. A bit of background info, Sonic Rush was the first Sonic game on the Nintendo DS, as a spiritual successor to the Sonic Advance trilogy. It was the first game ever to use the boost formula, my personal favorite gameplay formula to come out of the Sonic series. Since it was an exclusively 2D game, its version of the boost level design involved really long platforms, far too many loops and grind rails to count, and overall was a much better experience than the 2D segments of the Wii version of Sonic Colors. The DS version of Sonic Colors also has this mentality when it comes to level design, and that makes it instantly far superior to the console version. The game starts off with a surprisingly beautiful FMV ripped almost straight from the Wii version that shows off all the new Wisp power-ups. Frankly, I'm impressed at how beautiful it looks and how clear the music is coming out of DS speakers. Dimps really upped their compression game with this one. So the video goes on and then gets to everyone's favorite part where Sonic uses the Wisps. He uses Laser, then Drill, then Rocket, then... What the crud is this? Yeah, that's right, they changed the intro video slightly to show this version's Wisps. In place of the Wii version's Pink Spikes, Blue Cube, Green Hover, and Purple Frenzy, this game instead had Red Burst and Violet Void. Yeah, there's less Wisps than the Wii version, but frankly, in my opinion, this version's Wisp roster is superior to the Wii version's because Burst is way more fun to use than Spike, Cube, and Hover combined. Void and Frenzy are both pretty meh. As this is a handheld console, the cutscenes are almost entirely in a visual novel format, with the odd CGI cutscene here and there. The story is exactly the same as the Wii version, with just slightly different dialogue. To summarize, Dr. Eggman has built a giant amusement park in space that interconnects 6 different planets. Okay, 5 planets in an armada of spaceships. He's using this theme park as a ruse to hide his true intention to attract these little aliens called Wisps that inhabit all those random planets and use their life energy to power a giant mind control cannon built into the base of the theme park's central hub and pointed directly at Sonic's home planet. Okay, with the story out of the way, let's talk gameplay. As I said before, this game is basically Sonic Rush with the addition of Wisps. All the locations are identical to the Wii version, the park's main hub Tropical Resort, a food-themed planet called Sweet Mountain, an armada of neon spaceships called Starlight Carnival, the Wisp's home planet, Planet Wisp, an oceanic planet called Aquarium Park, and a planet with a dense asteroid field called Asteroid Coaster. Each area has 2 acts and a boss, as well as 3 optional side missions complete with character cameos. The first area, Tropical Resort, is your standard first level stuff, simple platforming to get you used to the physics. One interesting thing to note here is that the game actually has a few more moves than Sonic Rush. It has the homing attack and the stomp, as well as an air boost. Speaking of moves, surprisingly you can't use the boost in the first level the first time around because Sonic hasn't discovered the Wisps or Eggman's plan to kidnap them yet. After the first level, a cutscene plays where Sonic catches Orbot and Cubot in the process of trying to catch Wisps. Sonic saves the Wisps, and as a show of thanks, the Wisps give Sonic the ability to boost. Despite the fact that he can do that just fine in Sonic Rush, Rush Adventure, and Unleashed, but details. After a completely skippable tutorial, you gain access to the boost for level 2 onward. And guess what the first thing Sonic does with it is? He knocks over a Ferris wheel and it rolls down after Sonic down a hill. Are we sure Sonic is the good guy in this scenario? This is a public amusement park, and Sonic is heavily damaging it in level 2! We'll get back to that later. Anyway, the level continues and it's basically more of Sonic Rush. Loops, wall jumps, grind rails, and most importantly, boosting. It's a really solid start to the game. After this, there's the first boss, and there's nothing special to write home about it. Yeah, unlike the console version, you don't unlock any colored Wisps in Tropical Resort. Oh, and defeating the bosses does the whole anime dramatic final hit from 3 different angles thing that Sonic Rush did too. Before moving on to the next location, I feel like now is a good time to mention the soundtrack. Being as this is still Sonic Colors with the same location and story as the Wii version, naturally the soundtrack will be carried over too. Surprisingly, even though this game is on the DS, the audio quality is almost as good as the Wii version. I know I said that before about the intro, but I mean it! I played this version first, and when I eventually got around to the Wii version, I thought they were the exact same! Seriously, listen to the Wii version of Tropical Resort Act 1. Now listen to the DS version. Crazy, right? I can't imagine what kind of compression they did to keep such high quality, but I am sure glad they did it. There are a few songs, however, that aren't quite as good as the Wii version. Some of the more complex and synth-heavy songs have the normal synth replaced by a beautiful 8-bit synth. I haven't mentioned this about myself yet, but I love the 8-bit chiptune synths, and this game is no exception. Seriously, listen to the Wii version of Starlight Carnival Act 1, then listen to the DS version. Okay, with that little tangent out of the way, let's move back to the second area, Sweet Mountain. Sweet Mountain is a food-themed level, as I said before. However, unlike the console version where there's things like giant hamburgers, the DS version is pretty much exclusively candy, which frankly better fits the name Sweet Mountain. Even though it's pretty much only candy in this version, they go all out with the candy themes to the point where there's giant blobs of gelatin that can be used as springs, breakable platforms made of wafers, and obstacles made of falling jelly beans. I wish the Wii version had this much attention to detail. This area is where we're introduced to our first colored wisp, the namesake of Sonic Colors. Unlike the console version where we're introduced to the orange drill here, instead we're introduced to my favorite wisp in the entire series, the Red Burst, which grants Sonic the ability to infinitely jump for a short period of time. Another thing I'd like to point out about this version is that they actually put the wisps to some really creative uses. Like here in Sweet Mountain, you can use the burst to shoot yourself out of popcorn cannons, or use the fire to make tiny hot air balloons ascend, both of which allowing you to reach new paths. This is a huge step up from the Wii version, in which the wisp pretty much only sent you directly to new areas without all this clever flair. Also, a small detail, but the fire can also be used to melt the aforementioned gelatin springs. Why didn't the Wii version have details like this? Moving on, Act 2 is more the same, and the boss isn't really that great either. But you can use the burst wisp against it, which is super fun and satisfying to pull off. Also, I'd just like to point out that the squash and stretch animation on this boss always reminded me of VeggieTales. Just a funny little observation. The next area is my favorite area from the Wii version, Starlight Carnival. In the Wii version, this level has emphasis on long neon pathways that appear as you run on them, and hundreds of neon spaceships floating all around in the background. It legitimately pushes the Wii to its max graphics capabilities to the point where I would mistake this area to be something out of Sonic Generations, or heck, even Sonic Unleashed. The DS version obviously can't handle such over-the-top graphics, so what did they do instead? They put dozens of PNGs of the ships from the Wii version in the background, and you spend most of the time inside a few ships. The Wii version is guilty of spending too much time indoors too, but this version is more forgivable because of the technical limitations. The areas where you're outside the ships, you're mostly running on neon grind rails, which I suppose is a fair trade-off from the Wii version's neon pathways. Anywho, this area is where we're introduced to the second colored wisp of this version, Orange Rocket. Orange Rocket acts basically the same as in the Wii version. It turns Sonic into, well, a rocket, and launches him several stories vertically. During his ascent, he can pick up rings and other wisp castles, as well as destroy enemies. This is going to sound weird, but this version actually handles the rocket a lot better than the Wii version because there are a few areas where you have to specifically time your transformation to make it past crushing walls. It also has a few spots where the rocket snags on a ring thing and spins and starts flying horizontally! Seriously, step up your game, Wii version! Going back to the level itself, it's actually got some interesting design decisions. There are times where you get launched on the arrow of the Neon Archer statue, which is pretty interesting. There are also those Rube Goldberg launcher thingies from Oil Ocean all the way back in Sonic 2, which are always neat. It does take a bit of a dip at the end of Act 2, however, where there's an awkwardly slow auto-scrolling section where you're standing on the back of a neon whale. So that's a bit of a minus. Overall though, the level design, music, and atmosphere really do make it hold up to the Wii version, mostly because the Wii version's best moments in this area were all flair. Oh, and this boss is my favorite boss in the game because you're constantly running and you always need to be on top of your game. Moving on. Planet Wisp is next. In the Wii version, Planet Wisp was by far the area most guilty of awkward precision 2D platforming, which is also why Planet Wisp is my least favorite level in Sonic Generations. Ironically, by comparison, in the DS version, there's almost no platforming to speak of. Instead, this area puts huge emphasis on the next colored wisp, the Yellow Drill, which would have been unlocked all the way back in Sweet Mountain if this were the Wii version. The Yellow Drill acts basically the exact same as the Wii version. You find some soft ground or wall jump on a soft wall and, well, you drill through the dirt. It's a very self-explanatory wisp. Actually, I hate to say it, but the Wii version actually has the leg up on this wisp, since it's way more awkward to control with the D-pad on the DS version. That's pretty much the only thing the Wii version has over the DS version, however. That honor comes back to the DS version, however, when you realize the DS version's bosses from here on aren't essentially rematches of the earlier bosses, which they are on the Wii version. They have similar mechanics, yes, but in this area's boss, for example, you need the orange drill to defeat it because it recharges at half health, and the only way to prevent that is to drill into the water below and destroy its charging station. More things like that, please, Wii version! Oh, also, this level is filled with discount piranha plants, which weren't present in the console version. Just felt like pointing that out. After Planet Wisp comes Aquarium Park, this game's water level. It's a water level. There's nothing special to write home about. Yes, you can swim by infinitely jumping in the water in the Wii version, but that never made sense to begin with, so I'm glad it's not in this version. This is where we're finally introduced to the Cyan Laser, which is the first colored wisp you unlock in the Wii version, all the way back in Tropical Resort. Sonic transforms into a laser and ricochets off walls and special diamond thingies to reach new areas at light speed. It's easily my favorite wisp from the console version, and it would be my favorite here too if, you know, burst didn't exist. Nothing else worth noting here except the ability to use the yellow drill in the water, something that was already shown and mandatory in the previous boss, so it's not really worth noting again. The final area in this game is Asteroid Coaster. This is the location of the facility where Eggman keeps the captured wisps and turns them into energy for his nefarious deeds. In the process of creating the energy, the wisp turns into a Nega Wisp, which is completely different between versions. In the Wii version, they become Purple Frenzy, a transformation that turns Sonic into a monster that rampages and destroys everything in its path. No, it's not the Werehog, that's something entirely different. In this version, however, they instead become Violet Void, a transformation that turns Sonic into a tiny black hole that absorbs every entity nearby. In both versions, the Nega Wisps are my least favorite wisps to use because they're so awkward to control, but that actually makes sense given that the wisps are no longer themselves, but instead evil distortions of what they once were. It makes sense they would control weird since they would be fighting against Sonic as opposed to all the normal wisps that help him. Anyway, this area is by far the most difficult in the game, but it makes sense since it's the last area, equivalent to Scrap Brain Zone. Unfortunately, the difficulty is almost entirely because of weird level design choices and some mandatory use of the awkward-to-control Violet Void. First of all, there are times when you just sit on a roller coaster and wait for the next obstacle, but the problem is that with the tiny screen, it's pretty much impossible to see ahead and know when to jump off. There's also times where the roller coaster slows down and giant skulls appear in the background and choose a random car to bite at, making an instant death if you're hit by them. I mean, come on, this is one of the amusement park rides. There's no way insta-killing your guests is within regulations, Eggman! Anyway, that's the least of our worries, though, since thankfully the checkpoints are very forgiving in this level and are almost always before a roller coaster. The biggest problem here is instead the mandatory Violet Void sections. You see, the way Violet Void works is that it starts out small, slow, and unresponsive. The more it consumes, the bigger it becomes, and the bigger it becomes, the faster it moves and the quicker it responds to your controls. The problem is the limited amount of time you have to use it while you're floating over pools of insta-kill acid. Once it becomes big and fast, it's not such a problem, but since it takes forever to get to that point because of how slow the startup is, you spend most of your time trying to gain size and therefore speed, and once you do reach full speed, there's hardly any time left, and then you fall into the acid. My gosh, this level is still a pain to play! The boss is a revamped version of the Starlight Carnival boss, but this time it has a giant hammer made of asteroids. And also it's possible to quickly dispose of this boss with nothing but the void, and that is super satisfying to pull off. Once you defeat the boss, the last of Eggman's generators shuts down and the tractor beams holding the planets together disappear. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Eggman's holding all the planets together using tractor beams and all the bosses regarding the generators inside tractor beams. Once the tractor beams disappear, Sonic and Tails thinking the day is saved, Eggman reveals that he managed to capture enough Hyper-Go-On energy, the name of the Wisp life energy, which is kind of a stupid name but details, to power up his giant mind control cannon. He pulls the lever, Kronk, and activates the cannon, only for it to backfire and explode as it charges up. Why does it explode, you ask? Well, apparently, all the way back in Tropical Resort, when Sonic finished off the first boss, a piece of it flew off and got launched into a piece of the cannon, causing a leak that intensified when the cannon was activated. With the cannon being literally the foundation of Tropical Resort falling apart, the park becomes unstable. With the park on the brink of collapse, Sonic and Tails book it to the space elevator, where they run into Eggman, sporting a really big mech that he drives himself that's specially powered up with the Colored Wisp's abilities. Tails takes the elevator back to his home planet, leaving Sonic and Eggman in a face-off. Sonic then lures Eggman into chasing him down the elevator shaft, where we get to the final level, Terminal Velocity, which is surprisingly a top-down level. Basically put, Eggman chases you with his evil wisp mech behind you constantly, and you need to boost and weave your way around random parts of the shaft, making this a very unique level. At the end of the level, you land on a falling platform and face the Nega Wisp armor, face-to-face as the final boss. This guy has evil versions of all the Wisp abilities you've been using through your adventure and attacks you with them. Every time he uses one, you get a chance to boost into the mech and gain the Wisp ability that had just been used. Once you gain all 5, he charges up a big laser and points it at you point blank. The music comes to a stop. Then you activate all the Wisps you just saved up. They appear one at a time. The music slowly swells to a triumphant orchestral version of Reach for the Stars. The scene is tense. Then finally, Eggman fires his laser and you do some sort of ultimate boost that involves spamming the boost button to overpower his laser, which is thankfully way more forgiving than the final blow in the fight with Blaze in Sonic Rush. I mean, just look at this ridiculousness. Once the mech is defeated, the collapsing park turns into a black hole that consumes the entirety of Tropical Resort, which... Is no one going to talk about how there were likely innumerable people on the park at that time? We never see them, but as I said earlier, it's a public park. Sonic and Eggman likely just accidentally killed hundreds of innocent people. And that's not even mentioning the people who had traveled from Tropical Resort to the other planets. Now they're stuck on those planets because Tropical Resort was the hub that connected them all. Why does no one else talk about this when talking about the game? Either version! Anyway, the black hole almost consumes Sonic, then the Wisps come and save him and drop him safely on his home planet. The Wisps say goodbye to Sonic and the credits roll. And that was Sonic Colors, my favorite Sonic game on the Nintendo DS.
What about the Chaos Emerald?
What?
The Chaos Emerald! The MacGuffin to the Sonic universe that Eggman is going after in every single game!
Wait a minute, didn't I already do this joke back in my Sonic 2 review? Besides, the Chaos Emeralds are never even mentioned hide nor hair in the story. In the console version, you can use Super Sonic at any level if you 100% the game by finding all the hidden collectibles, the red star rings, but all the red rings do in this version is unlock concept art, the game's soundtrack for the gallery, and levels for the multiplayer mode.
The Chaos Emeralds are a collectible in this game!
Yeah, it turns out another point about the Wii version, the Chaos Emeralds can be collected via special zones, much like the classics. When you reach the end of an act with 50 or more rings, the game will kindly ask if you want to enter the special zone. In this game's special zone, you go through a long Sonic 2 style half-pipe on the bottom screen, where you use the stylus to control Sonic's position. The half-pipe is lined with red, blue, and yellow spheres, and you go 3 laps collecting a different color each lap. If you touch the wrong color sphere on the wrong lap, that sphere will fly away, never to be seen again, making it so you can't collect it on the proper lap. There's 7 special stages, 1 per area including the multiplayer levels. These special stages are quite a bit easier than the ones in Sonic 2, mostly because the draw distance is way better, and the floor is transparent so you can see what's coming up when you're going over a hill, and of course the touch controls allowing you to snap Sonic where he needs to be almost instantly. Once you collect all 7, you gain access to the true ending. Appropriately hidden above Planet Wisp, there's a secret supersonic final boss against the Mother Wisp, who's been converted into a giant Mega Wisp by Eggman. The fight has 2 phases that switch back and forth. First, you're in an isometric perspective as you boost into small asteroids to smack them into her hands, all the while dodging her swipe attacks and little purple... I don't know what those are. I can only assume they're bundles of Hyper-Go-On energy she's shooting at you that slow you down if they cling onto you. The second phase is fully 3D, in which you can land a hit on her. Sonic rams himself into her eye, all while avoiding asteroids, those purple Hyper-Go-On blobs, lasers she shoots at you from her eye, and red bundles of Hyper-Go-On power, the latter 2 of which will actually knock you back, and will knock you all the way back to the first phase if you're hit 3 times. Typically during post-Sonic 06 final bosses, the song that plays will be an orchestral cover of the respective game's main theme. Since that was already used for the Eggman final boss, however, guess what they chose to be the music for this boss? It's instead an 8-bit cover of the main theme, the literal opposite of an orchestral remix. And I am 100% okay with that. Once you hit her 3 times, the evil conversion wears off and she transforms back into the normal Mother Wisp. There's a cutscene that plays where she claims she's the mother of all the wisps and that she made all the planets this game takes place on, which, okay? Then there's a pre-rendered cutscene where all the planets get teleported away, back to their original positions in space. By the way, when is this cutscene supposed to take place? The tractor beams are already gone, so it has to be around the time Sonic fights Eggman, but Sonic and Tails are still in space at the beginning of the encounter, then suddenly on their home planet at the end? They only got to their home planet after fighting Eggman, then how and why were they still in space when they first encountered Mother Wisp? This whole scenario is confusing. No wonder the Wii version left Mother Wisp out. Oh, also remember what I said earlier about the park patrons trapped on those planets? Yeah, now they're really gone if they were still on the planets when they teleported. Not cool, Sonic. So that was Sonic Colors, my favorite Sonic game on the Nintendo DS. Does it hold up to its Wii counterpart? Absolutely! If anything, this version is far superior to the Wii version because the levels have way more flow to them and the wisps included are way more fun to use. There also seems to be a lot more attention to detail with things like how the wisps affect the environment and the existence of the character cameos in the side missions. Sure, it's an entirely 2D game, and typically I prefer 3D games, but since the console version was 70 to 80% 2D anyway, it practically is another 2D Sonic game, and as such, the comparison as a 2D Sonic game can easily be made. For a final conclusion, this is the superior version of Sonic Colors by far! If you want to give Sonic Colors a try, I highly suggest playing this version over the console version. Pick it up if you get the chance.